something interesting, something cool. Jabram, you made it. This is the end of the Ulai for you. This is a celebration. You're free. We'll probably take a last day. Yeah, we'll probably take a minute tomorrow and go through a lot of the submissions and stuff like that. Oh, it's a Muslim holy day. Eid Mubarak. Am I saying it right? So on my YouTube, I went and made a little screen for this tutorial, a title screen or whatever. Hopefully that makes it a little bit more attractive for people to click on. If you haven't already, stop by, give it a thumbs up, a like, or yeah, work through it if you have the time to set aside. I'm working on doing the rendering. Yeah, I think it looks a little bit more. I realized earlier, like I just had a viewport screenshot and I was like, this doesn't look too professional. So I think this just makes it a little bit more, we'll see, but yeah, that should be a little bit more professional, or just get some more clicks, get these clicks farmed. I was watching it. Yeah, so I'm doing a rendering tutorial now, like lighting, rendering, and doing the sand grain stuff. I don't know if I had, whoops, forgot the thing. Yeah, so I'm working on setting aside some time to get rendering of this stuff with little particles or little grains of sand, like copied onto the points from that tutorial. So we should hopefully, I don't know, within a few days, maybe over the weekend or something like that, get a part 2 of the tutorial with rendering stuff. Cashing it out while I watch the stream. It's a good multitasking of your brain and your CPU time. Yeah, so that's on there. We got a new Twitch primer, DJK Design. If you're in the chat, thank you. If you're watching this on YouTube or somewhere else, thanks for giving me the Twitch Prime earlier today. Today's all about shading and rendering. Not fully. So this Friday is just like a work session kind of, drafting kind of thing. So it just stems from this name, is the CoolZone. There's like, this guy is qualifying these certain factors. Stasha, how's it going? This is so wholesome. So when these certain conditions exist for an elongated period of time in a country, this is what this guy is calling, or historians are calling, the cool zone. It's like I don't know, a period maybe with revolutionary potential or something like that. So we'll see what happens. This is just to occupy ourselves, just to keep busy while everything is so wild in the world right now. But yeah, so I had an idea with like one of these kind of glass busts things or whatever today. And then I want to, this is pretty interesting. This is like a Voronoi fracture or something. So what I wanted to do was have some particles kind of filling up one of these busts. Let me see, my music is out of sorts right now. So I have some particles kind of filling it up. I'm gonna get Voronoi never fails to catch the eye. Yeah, it seems like it gets used a lot for replicating nature. Like you can do bubbles, foam stuff with it. This is like a very organic. I don't know. It's like an underwater coral or something like that, maybe. But I'm gonna do something a little bit different than that. I want one of these busts. I'm gonna be trying to set some smoke going in it with particles like pushing up against the edges of the bust or whatever. I also on my website, what I was starting to do was put these resources aside. If anyone is like just getting into 3D or stuff like that, it's usually hard to acquire or know where to go to find this stuff. So there's these different websites that host like free textures. I tried to find all these resources that was pretty high quality materials, but then it's free or run off of like Patreon donation support or stuff like that. But yeah, so I usually go to these places when I'm looking for starting points of things. So it's a pretty good bookmark or something to have. This Squarespace web design stuff is pretty. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't know. I used to like it better, but like this, I had to set this stuff up. You couldn't do like a table with their editor, so I had to pretend like I was a restaurant and this was my menu of like a wine menu or an entree menu, and I had to type in these the website URLs like they were menu items that you would order or something like that. It was the only way to. Yeah, you couldn't do an HTML table. I think like you can kind of, but then the styling, you don't really have control over the CSS of it or like the styling. And I don't think I could set like it just was. I don't know. I might switch. My old website, I was just like hand coding it kind of. But it gets to be a pain. Like I was basically typing in the all of this stuff manually or whatever. So it's kind of a pain because you're not using like the CMS or the content management system or whatever. But yeah, well, so I just wanted to point that out. That's probably where I'm gonna grab the starting point for the model I'm gonna use today. There's some interesting scans, the Smithsonian, the sample and hold. They do some nice like photogrammetry acquisition or whatever, so they have some samples. Have I ever used XSI? You're talking about soft image? I haven't. Not maybe. I might have looked at some like learning material and stuff for it, but I haven't ever messed around with it. Hey, Straight 9 LED, how's it going? I'm pretty good. I'm looking forward to the weekend and some relaxation somewhat time. Looking forward to going through more of this burnout effect over the weekend. So we'll probably do some lighting, rendering and stuff like that of it. It should be pretty fun. I'm hoping to have a good cache to work with and start with, so we're not jumping into. We've already done like a few days tweaking pyro simulations and stuff like that. Big brain stuff. Big brain time. This 3D scans is usually a nice go-to. They add some of these are pretty funny. I don't know what's going on with them. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe this one is nice. I'm just looking for a pretty typical, nothing like too detailed. So I think this, whoops, where did it go? This is Napoleon. Francois Joseph Bozio. Napoleon there. Yeah, so I'll just grab this use the Einstein one? You want more clicks, you think? Should get one that the yeah, we can do that. The Einstein one's a pretty good idea, I think, maybe, because I'm gonna be because it's like all the way at the bottom. Your flipbooks save automatically. Yeah, I have a script. A Python script I wrote a while back. So it will save like a backup of the hip file, or it will save a copy of it in the flipbook directory. And then in the metadata of the MP4 file, it stores a path to that original hip file that was used to generate the flipbook, and then the backup hip file that gets like tagged the version of Houdini you're using. So like if you're going back to super old tests, it's really nice to keep track of just what version of Houdini you ran it with, what like all that kind of stuff or whatever. So with like doing simulation R&D stuff, I found it pretty useful to keep track of all that stuff, where it's like you're just changing settings and then you go back like 5 days later, or you send it to a client for review and they settle on a certain thing, and then you're like, you could lose days like trying to recreate it or whatever. So just having that kind of setup, it's paid off many times over to write that script or whatever. Let's grab him. Download Einstein's brain. Yeah, so I think this might even work well, because it was like, what was wasn't there, he was like doing some stuff with atoms? What other stuff did he do? So if I'm putting particles, I'm going to be moving the particles around inside of him. We could say maybe they're like atoms or something like that. Photoelectric effect. I'm kind of thinking these particles might look more like Dippin' Dots, or kind of like that. I don't. The script might be public. Let me. Probably an older version of it or something like that, at least is. Yeah, I think so. This is my GitHub. There's the link for it. So this is like an older version of it, but it should work. I don't really have the time right now or anything to do like a complete tutorial or breakdown of it. But this is like the metadata recording portion of it. It's all just like using FFmpeg. It might be, I don't really have instructions or anything to like set it up, but that's the flipbook. So we'll get our Einstein geometry into the scene here. You find him. I wish these websites didn't always zip their files. Like one of the nice things about the Houdini file swaps is you can do URLs directly in here. So like if a website doesn't zip their file, you can just directly type in the URL and you don't even have to mess around with that. All right, so we got him. Sneaky gem. Starting it off with gems. So it looks like he's on his head. Something, the tables were turned on him. Yeah, he's upside down. The normals are reversed. So I might just try inverting the scale, like you do -1. So that will just flip everything around. I don't know. Sometimes this is like a STL file, so sometimes that file format is like using inverted coordinates or something like that. And then I just usually do the match size. Use axis align. So I usually use this one at least to start to get him moved to the center, and then just to make sure that the scale is unitized or normalized. Sometimes when you bring in a model, it's like 500 units big or 5,000 units big, and then if you go to turn it into like a VDB from polygons or something, because that uses like object space or world space voxel size, you'll crash or you run out of memory because it's trying to make like billions of voxels. But so that's why I usually just start working at unit size. Let me take a look at this. Match axis? Is that what you mean by axis align? Or align? You just use all of them. Like that. You use them infinitely. I haven't used these too much. This tries to find like the dominant axis. This one's quite slow. Oof. Gotta. This is pretty. This is a final. We finished it. This is our abstract art for today. Yeah, I don't know. There might be stuff. I've seen people do like the PCA, like point cloud align. I think it's kind of based off of this. If you just do done. If you just do the whoops. If you do the box. Sometimes if your stuff isn't axis aligned, you can do like orient bounding box, and then you can extract, like you could try to extract the dominant dimension or axis from this box, and then use that to like reorient, like pop it to be aligned. But I think for this we're good. I don't know if we need this pedestal right now. It's kind of extra stuff. Sometimes these scans are pretty high resolution as well. Like we don't need all that geometry, or if we do, sometimes in the past I've gone back and like turned off my proxy or whatever. But you could do poly reduce. You can do VDB from polygons and back to polygons to do like a rasterize and then back. And then there's also remesh. We'll see how these hold up. So we'll try 25%. Sometimes when they scan it in, it has some artifacts. Like there was a hook on the top of his head or something like that. He had a bad hair day that day. So maybe we should try this remesh. This one you can get maybe a little bit better topology, but it seems to be generally a little bit slower. So you do adaptive. It will try to preserve the high detail areas with like smaller edge lengths for higher resolution. When pinched his cheek. Sometimes you need additional iterations. This does like relaxations, and it can get rid of these. Yeah, this. It's like, I don't know if there are little bumps in the scan or something like that, but you can also play around with. So relative density, you make it lower. You should get like a lower resolution, or a little bit less memory or stuff like that. And then this gradation, this controls like how quickly the topology can transition from high detail to low detail area or whatever. I don't know what's going on with this. You can also maybe use attributes and stuff, or just force the minimum edge length to be a certain size. We might try, I don't know. I might just stick with this polyreduce. It's just kind of just wasting time with this stuff. So this should be good. Just gonna get rid of this pedestal. So you can see now we're kind of working more closely to real time, or just more interactively after reducing the stuff. And then we'll just do a fill to make him watertight again. Cap. Kappa. Is this is the same as... It's the same, I don't know, maybe it tricks you. Sometimes they do that with the tab menu. They'll rename the node and have it under a different name, and it will just lay it down with different presets. You could do... Might be the quadrilaterals we need to do. Triangle. I don't know why they have this offset like baked in. It's like, I don't know why you would always want that defaulting at 2.25 or whatever. It's a little weird. This should be good. Yeah, so we just want to get him watertight, and you do another match size. I don't know why, but Houdini will cook the scene graph even after you make like a copy. It's a little counterintuitive. Yeah, so we'll just do this to re-home him to the scene origin. And then we're ready to do a smoke simulation or get him fully set up. So we want to blow smoke around inside of him. I'm just going to make him into a VDB. The smoke solver uses this VDB stuff as collision geometry. Usually I find it better to pre-build the collision geometry in SOPs. You just have more control over it. I could do like smoothing operations, erosion, dilation, and just visualize it pretty easily in here. If you're doing it in DOPS, you kind of have to rely on certain algorithms that are built in that might not give you the best results. They do the laser scan thing or whatever, and I think the DOP method is based off of this ISO offset. So you have some different settings here, but this I think is like an older process. The VDB construction method seems to be a little bit more reliable. So this is going to be collision geometry. I'll just plug it into that second input. Usually I save the first primary one for like sources, and the last one I always use that for the domain. We just name these to keep ourselves somewhat organized. This is domain bounds. And this will be collision. And then we'll do source particles. So it looks like because we're already working at a unit size, we're good with our stuff like that. Can we add colors in smoke here? So I'm planning to move particles around using the smoke, and I'll be adding colors to them. We could show some of the stuff. There's an older stream I did, if you go to the stream archive, that talks about coloring smoke. I do a few different methods in there. But what I'm planning to do today is just use the smoke as like a force, and then I want particles to be advecting or getting pushed around using them. So I'll do typical expressions, dbox, up input path. The parent nodes third or last input. Hello, sir. I love your streams. I'm and my friend making short animation movie. I have to make some grain, volume, and lava effect. Your stream helps a lot. Thanks. Yeah, it's really good to get feedback like that. It's nice to know it's having a positive impact. That people are finding it useful. I was worried that it might be too slow paced or just too long form for people to enjoy watching, but it's nice to know people find it useful. So these will just grab the dimensions. We're using the same thing right now as unit, like 111 with 0 as the center, so none of these numbers will change, but because I'm OCD, I will just always set it up this way. Alex, how's it going? So just do this for the centroid. X, Y, Z. So we have those getting updated, and then I usually do solve on creation frame. And maybe for the source particles, maybe we'll just do like a kind of like a brain shape. I don't know. Maybe it's just like the core of his head. So if we just do reshape SDF. On vacation, sitting in a car, watching CoolZone. you need a phone with a big screen to handle it, I feel like. Otherwise all this type is too small to follow along. So I'm just going to erode this VDB. Sometimes using world space units is nice to switch over to. This way it's like decoupled from your voxel size. So if you go in and change the resolution, you'll still get interesting results. There he is. It's like an alien Einstein. So I'm just trying to get something close to like the core of his head. I might do another. Hello, CoolZone. Vegan Nuts. How's it going? This is a dedicated viewer. It's 1 a.m. or midnight. He's in his car on vacation, following along. So let's take a look at our source. This is the this is where our particles will start. Should be okay for right now. So I'll just maybe do a scatter. I have to go back to, should probably go back to polygons just to make sure they're getting placed where I think they are. Yeah, so that should be good. Sometimes with this output attributes, you can assign p-scale. So it's just a nice way to get them spatially like set up. If you don't do that, everything will be overlapping, or it will just get the default like 0.05 radius. If you assign p-scale, then it will automatically adjust that so that if they get smaller, they're always kind of fitting together like that. So I might just start out with less of them. I could put them in. And I could start making maybe a velocity. So if I just want to start pushing everything forward. Basically, I think the most interesting area of this is going to be his profile. So I'm just looking to see like the smoke colliding around these shapes and swirling around and stuff like that. So hitting the border and rolling, I think, is going to be the best motion. So if we start with these particles in this position, I'll turn on velocity. So if we look at V, we'll just make this size 3. So we have X, Y, Z, and then Z with 1. Now all of our velocities are pointing forward. Using a meeting about testing VM for school for the near future, giving feedback on my experience breaking my... Which VM were you looking for people to use? I haven't found a great... There's ones that are nice, but I haven't found an ideal VM solution or whatever. Seems like now Zoom and TeamViewer and like all those remote companies are situated to just scoop up all these customers for the distance-based learning and stuff like that. So we have our particles going forward. We have a p-scale. We might want to just create another density just to have control over it. So density, velocity, p-scale. So I usually just do this multiple solver with the SOP solver. Just get all the brains going. This is actually interesting. They have these 4 brains with the Z or whatever. The Zorro. DOP network is just full of brains. This is the smoke brain, multiple brain. So the SOP path, usually I'll go back to here and just hijack one of these expressions I've already typed in, and then just reconfigure it so that this is the primary input. And then because this is returning a string value, you need to put the backticks around it. These are returning a float or a number, numerical value, so you can just leave them like that and it will turn the box green. But these, you need to do it with the backticks just for string expressions and parameters. So we have our particles. We want to have them affect the fields. We just need to do particle to field. And we'll have ones going to V for vel. And this is using the V attribute. Don't want extrapolated. I usually move this threshold down and add it. Edvino, how's it going? So we have our velocities, and then we have our density. I can just copy and paste that. And now we just, our resolution, we're doing 5 voxels, 5 voxels, 5 voxels. So I'm setting up a where did it go? I'm setting up a smoke simulation. I'm making an Einstein bust, or I took the Einstein bust and I'm gonna treat it kind of like glass or plastic and just have particles, colored particles like blowing around inside of it, swirling around, just maybe filling his face with particles or propagating them outwards or whatever. So that's what I'm doing right now. We're just setting up our smoke sim, just getting started kind of. So this is 5 voxels, 5 voxels, 5 voxels. We can actually see the individual voxels here and count them. So we need more. This is going to be, if you were using Lego bricks, you only have like 20 Lego bricks to make something out of. So as we increase this in middle mouse, and we probably want to be close to 100 or something just to set things up and debug. You don't want to be really high resolution, because then it's just too slow to debug and test things. But you don't want to be super coarse or super 5 voxels is just too low resolution to even tell what's going on. You doing Windows remote desktop client? That's actually a pretty good thing. I've used that in the past, the RDP thing or whatever. I found it to be like pretty reliable for them just to give it away for free. Using DirectX instead of OpenGL. For Linux, it seems like the VNC viewer stuff is pretty cheap and reliable, or somewhat reliable. So I'm just going to do the static object. We're going to attach his face, his mind, body, soul. So for this one, I can grab the same expression we typed out. Command line rendering, no GUI. You could do proxy volume. Grab that input. So it doesn't look like anything happened, but if I do collision guide, you can see it's bringing him in. But right now, I think we need to switch this to volume sample. Otherwise, it will try to rebuild or reconvert our existing stuff. To do volume sample, then it will just use the existing stuff we constructed without modifying it. And then if we want the inside to be air and the outside to be solid, you just do invert sign. That flips around with the inside outside of the volume. So if I play it, I'm just going to turn on OpenCL. We're already getting something interesting happening. You could see the difference of invert sign. If we leave that off, it thinks the inside of him is solid. So every frame it's deleting all of the velocity, and it's not allowing us to add smoke because it's saying that this is filled in area. The invert sign is now saying the outside is solid and the inside is empty or a vacuum. You can move stuff around inside of it. So we'll just set this up at already pretty cool. You already had three finals so far. We made some weird abstract geometry, doing something here with this, and then pressing escape quickly. You get we have one final, and now we're already created our second work. So we'll set this up to import. We want to get the density field, and we want to, I usually have started using the Pyro post-process more recently. This is a nice all-in-one node. You can adjust the visualization, the thickness. You can do the VDB conversion, and you can also put this metadata. This is saying to just save the file as 16-bit. It doesn't affect stuff within the scene, but it's nice to have everything all in one node. And then I usually will just make a light. This isn't for lighting like final purposes. This is just a visualization light. So I usually turn off attenuation, and then I can just like type in some numbers to have it. It's like a directional sunlight or something like that. So that just lets us see some shadows and stuff. Without the light, you just have the headlight. And then you're just looking at the alpha channel or whatever. So it's generally when you're looking at the Pyro results, you want some shadows to evaluate like what's going on inside of it and stuff. Yeah, this collision worked out pretty well, like rolling back. So it kind of flows with his hair. It's already very nice. Yeah, the flow lined up, worked out well. So I'd usually turn off the cache You're gonna try it, play around with that later. Yeah, sometimes when I'm working, I'll notice something is like a side that you want to make go along this direction or something. Usually if that happens, I'll just like save the file and remember that version is like a good starting point for another direction or another kind of thread you want to pull at later on. So we're doing the 31st, the last day of the month. It's going to be August soon. What the hell? Scenes. So this is just going to be Einstein low version 1. Yeah, so I usually turn off cache simulation. If you're doing OpenCL stuff, August, but looks like March yet. Yeah, I guess it's we've just been stuck in March for it's been March for 5 months or something like that. Perpetual March. For a lot of places here, they went on lockdown at right after St. Patrick's Day. So I feel like there's a bunch of abandoned office spaces that just have St. Patrick's decorations, like green Irish hats and stuff, still strung up. Like if you go into an office space that's just been closed or locked down for 5 months, it's perpetual St. Patrick's Day celebration there. So I'm just renaming this to density. So I forgot to do that after I copied it. And then this advection stuff, I usually prefer the better models. Those are just a little bit more accurate. And then if you're doing GPU, OpenCL simulation, you kind of get that for free. You don't have to worry about it. I might try maybe shrinking the p-scales a little bit. I don't know, sometimes that will give you a little bit more detail. If we do that, we might want to kind of increase velocity to compensate for stuff. But basically reducing the p-scale, increasing density, you're kind of increasing the contrast overall. Like you have more wispy bits, a little bit more detail. And then I'm just gonna double check. We want to turn off. We're below that limit right now because we're doing 100, 100, 100. But just for going forward, it's good to make sure that checkbox is turned off. I think maybe we'll just start with an attribute noise. I'm going to use this to add to the velocity or to the V attribute. So we want that force to be centered at 0. We don't want it biased, like only in the positive. You don't have it centered, like all of the forces will be biased to go in positive axes or whatever. And animated, just to evolve over time. Whoops. So we could just crank the amplitude to make sure it's working. This is kind of like a curl noise, I believe. Maybe not. It's just this simplex noise. So it's not as good as a curl noise, but we're just doing particles. It should be fine for right now. When do you want it not to be centered? It depends what you're doing. Like if you're doing a color value, your colors are always from 0 to 1. They're not generally negative. If you're doing like a displacement, like displacing along normal, you generally don't want centered. Like you just want to go positive to inflate things. But for forces, you always want those to be centered generally so that they're going like in every direction. So it just depends on the type of data, your intention with the noise. Then this element size is nice. It's like the swirl size. So that's a good starting point. Just going a little bit higher with the resolution. I'm not going to go crazy high with this smoke stuff for today or for right now, just because we're going to use it to push particles around. So we're not too worried about the high frequency subtle details. We're just more interested in the general motion of everything. So what I might do another particle to field. This is what I usually do when I want to start doing the buoyancy. So if we take the same density particles and then just add them to the temperature field, then we can, I'm just going to go and pin my view at this level. Then we can introduce the thermal buoyancy. So just upward direction. I usually turn off the diffusion for that stuff. But I'm thinking this might help out even more of like having some just circular motion. We're going in this direction, and then instead of everywhere having it like shoot out, we could maybe go closer to the hair. Maybe this is too strong of buoyancy at the start. Just some subtle stuff, so it's just a little bit more like guided motion. So that should be good, maybe helpful. And then I'll just do an object merge. Is it gonna work? It worked. And I'm gonna do this to grab the velocity. So if you do a slice and a trail, volume trail, you can get the streamlines, and we can visualize the motion of everything. Usually I switch it instead of distance to time. So by time basically means only move these by the length of the velocity. Distance will use the same length, or we'll try to move your streamers the same distance for everything, which just makes everything kind of jumbled up, because even the stuff that isn't really moving will be super long. We have the velocity, and I'm gonna do another pop network. So we'll start with our particles. What I might do for them is like a points from volume. So we'll actually have like a somewhat solid filling of that core that we eroded down. So if I look at the size of this, I think you generally want this maybe at like 0.5. So basically if you make each of these particles half, then they'll be touching. I don't know why they do it differently with this points from volume. And then we should be good. We have our source particles. And I'll bring the velocity in here. So I'll just do all geometry and only create particles or bring them in on the first frame. And then we want advect by volumes. We can do second context geometry to bring in that force. I'm also going to bring in the collision I'm just gonna switch this stuff around so you can keep using the same inputs. So now I can just go in here and copy. And actually just grab both of those. Now we have didn't get him. Just need to unpin the view. Got him. All right. We just need to update this. Now we're getting our pyro motion. So there's different methods you can use for updating it. This update force, like default settings, seem to be a good starting point, but sometimes you want to do, you change it to like update position, you just have a little bit, you're directly like modifying the particles instead of like they would perfectly match the motion of the velocity. This update force allows you to add like wind or other stuff and then balance between the two pretty well. With this air resistance, I think the higher you increase it, like as treat as wind, the more it will perfectly match the velocity flow. So I don't know about this points from volume method. I might just start with the same source particles. Do you know any news? Volume displacement for Redshift Houdini. I do not know any news about that. I saw news about Redshift RT, the guy Saul, I forget his last name, but he posted a video that he was showing some of the features and stuff like that of Redshift RT, the real-time implementation of it. But you can do, yeah, the Trellos where they do like dev tracking and stuff like that. You can always do the volume displacement stuff in SOPs and bake it into your volume. That's not ideal because it's a GPU render, so eventually you'll like run into the limit. But yeah, it's unfortunate. Like the Arnold stuff is really good. Mantra, of course, you can kind of do whatever you want with your volume, but I think the Redshift, they're just a little bit behind on their volume support or volume implementation. So I might switch this to just geometry, and then I'm just gonna make a copy of this in case I want to go back. But maybe I'll just switch this now to scatter onto surfaces and leave it set up this way. So now we're emitting stuff. It's going the other way. Now we're emitting stuff like every frame. So I think I might want more more motion, more particles in the underlying pyro simulation. So it's more of an immediate gust instead of like the gradual buildup we were getting before. So because this is just doing the underlying motion, kind of care less about the visual results of it, and just more about this motion and stuff. I don't know why the something might be Kind of weird how this stuff is staying behind. Right? Should be getting more motion. I don't know if it's like new stuff that's getting added, but it's not. Like wasn't moving around as much or something before. So we have some stuff going through it. I don't know if sometimes you increase substeps that can fix those collision, the penetration issues. Sometimes as well, just on the velocity, instead of single step, you do this CFL condition, then you'll get a more accurate velocity motion. That just means to like update the velocity force more times every substep. Single step, it will just check the current position and try to move it. But if you're really going at a high velocity, sometimes you get overshooting and stuff, like using that method. Well, this is starting to be something. We're getting some nice like negative space, some nice gaps and stuff. Let's just try more particles. So I might go up here to the DOP and go back to a lower resolution. Because we have to fetch the velocity field from the GPU every frame, it's just a bit, causes everything to go a little slower. Again, we don't care too much about the smoke motion, like high resolution detail. This is more just motion, just to get some nice non-divergent, uniform kind of rolling motion. You might go even higher with the source, the initial velocity. And right now, these source particles are like little strings, basically. They don't move each frame. So I might go not do relax iterations and then just change my seed to be a different number every frame. So these are kind of flickering, or they're going to be fuzzy and getting a different initial position every frame. I think now we have some more interesting rolling motion happening. Starting to see some stuff happening. He emerges. An Einstein appeared. It's pretty cool the way it's highlighting the eyebrows and recycling around and stuff like that. So I don't know if this is a good idea, but we're gonna try it. Sometimes I'll add this pop grains to do interparticle collisions, so that they're not, we can assign them a p-scale and they'll like bounce off of each other. They won't be overlapping or stuff like that. I think if we do that this global particle separation should kind of take over. I don't know if we need other attributes. It should be good, maybe. Needs p-scale to work. So I'm just gonna do a grain source and just examine the attributes that this one is adding. So it looks like it makes a p-scale. I think that's all that we need. It adds this GL one, but that's just a visualization. So if I just create the p-scale attribute directly on the mesh, then the particles that get emitted will inherit it. So when you're kind of like going rogue like this and building like butchering their existing shelf tools or workflows, sometimes you need to put down, like recreate their setup and see what data it's expecting. Like when I'm doing the flip solver, if I'm making my own like particle emitters, I'll usually need to reference it and walk through it or whatever. You know, I think that it just ignores this particle separation. It's kind of weird how they have it there, even though it's kind of getting ignored or not being looked at. So I might start copying spheres to the points just to visualize the p-scale a little bit better. We could stop like doing the disks, because this spheres is nice because it will get lighting information. So it might just be too many. So they're all kind of pushing each other away right now. I'm just gonna pin the view back there. You've pulled your hair out a couple times forgetting to add p-scale. Yeah, it seems like a lot of the they set up a lot of their nodes like with little gotchas that the shelf tools will add automatically, but it's not very intuitive if you're just trying to use them individually or pull bits and pieces of them, which makes it a little frustrating. And then this particle separation thing at the top is just kind of, I don't know. It says it's like scaling parameters, but I usually don't see a difference changing it around or something. I usually just leave it at the default, but it is definitely misleading to have it up there. And then I'm just going to do a pop wrangle. So I'm going to use this to... Are you able to use randomized p-scale with pop grains? I believe so. You just turn this off. This is a little hack that they have in there that will tell the solver to treat everything with the same p-scale, but if you do want different p-scales, then you can disable this. It might be a little bit slower, but then it will do individual p-scales. And then I'm just going to try to modulate the p-scale using the age of these particles. So when the age is, or they've been alive for 0, this is in seconds. From 0 to 2 seconds, I want these p-scales. Sometimes I'll do like a really low value instead of all the way down to 0. So we'll go from really small particles too big. It was too big. blew his brains. Even Einstein has his mind blown today. Yeah, and then if we want to do non-uniform, we could add like a random number based off of the particle ID. So right now everything will be going between 2 and 3 seconds as the maximum. We could even go higher, like from 2 to 8 seconds. So now some will grow faster or sooner than others. It's pretty cool. I'm just gonna turn that clock on, so we're doing like actual real-time playback visualization. I think our initial velocity is a little bit too strong. It's just like they're being shot out of a cannon. I want something, looks nice. Yeah, we're making progress. I want something feeling a little bit more magical, or I don't know, less ballistic. Some curl noise maybe, or lines. Yeah, I'm just trying to get the motion correct right now. I don't like the way that they're hitting and stopping. I don't know if I need, sometimes like when this happens you need maybe a little bit of like a delay. Like if you try moving your start frame delayed, then there's already existing motion for them to roll around in and stuff. Yeah, that's what I was thinking right now with the collisions, is like it's not getting enough of that rolling motion or whatever. So I don't know if it's just the resolution of this. Let me turn off this noise. I might start with some more of these particles. You know what I think it is? I think, let me turn this stuff off. I think it's the friction on the grains. All this stuff is super, can be like a bit heavy-handed or whatever. I don't know. Your phone's gonna die. thanks for checking it out at the start. Yeah, hopefully we get a little bit better. Maybe we'll try more buoyancy. I feel like just having one direction going against a collider, like then you don't get as much rolling and stuff like that happening. Sometimes this sometimes the collisions aren't it will like clear out the velocity too soon, maybe. I'm gonna try less particles, maybe going bigger. I'm gonna try no buoyancy. I might try the vortex confinement. So the intention of this is to like boost the existing swirling and stuff like that. So maybe more of it will help preserve some of the, make it look more like a smoke is driving the stuff. Let me try as well. Maybe we just start from a smaller, more localized area. We might have missed it all. Alright, I think we got it that time. So this should kind of help you see the collision and rolling and stuff of it a little bit more. I'm gonna take my smoke particles, whoops, just do this jitter on them. So this will make them fill a little bit more area. They'll be Einstein ball pit. It's the Einstein Dippin' Dots. This should make them lead the motion of these a little bit more. I think I want to go higher again with my source velocity. And then I think these are just growing too soon. So I'm going to try delayed expansion. Yeah, I don't know why this is... I want to be seeing more rolling. Usually with the... I might just need to examine the smoke stuff. We want to make sure this motion is happening before. So I'm just going to try moving my source. So I think right now with it going at the forehead, that just doesn't lend itself well to a nice collision. We might try starting closer to the bottom of him, near his mouth area. And on my source velocities, I'll add some upward direction. Let's just see how this works out. You try adding velocity based off the cross product or gradient of the bust. Yeah, that could give us some nice like direction, some nice spreading motion. I'm gonna try banging out this, just adjusting this stuff for a little bit. If I don't get anywhere with it, I might move into that area. So let's see what this gives us. Yeah, we're getting better motion, at least with the smoke. I'm gonna go walk back the resolution a little bit. I'm just not close to where I need to be be moving to like a higher resolution. I don't know what's going on with this. I feel like this, I guess this stuff is just going super fast. All right. So I'm gonna switch my source on the smoke here, at least so these particles is just on the first frame. I think what's happened, one of the issues we're having is that I'm adding velocity, and then every frame in this roughly the same positions, I just keep adding velocity. So it's just growing and becoming super strong over time. But if I want just a gentle, really nice rolling motion, we'll just do the same simulation frame equals 1 expression that we were doing on the pop solver. So we just make that velocity on the first frame instead of continuously adding stuff. I think that was a big issue we were having. Basically every frame it was adding, injecting more and more velocity, kind of like you're blowing through a straw or something like that, and it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. This is more of a gentle, like initial expansion or whatever. Didn't know the function for that, the enable solver. Who did that? Yeah, if you look inside of here, this I think is the same thing that they use on this. Like I think it's linked to the, might be linked to it there, or they might be doing it somewhere else, but that's a good thing to do. Also, if you're doing stuff with like a checkbox based way of like turning on or off portions of the chain, you could do it. Like if you're troubleshooting or you're making a tool, if I wanted to make a checkbox that was like add gravity, I could just do this kind of wiring configuration. And then right here, if I wanted to, I could make a checkbox that's like just enable or disable that node. It's a little intimidating sometimes with DOPS because it just doing simple stuff requires a lot of nodes, but generally the the DOP nodes are doing like a lot more simpler tasks than you would think. So what I wanted to do in here was add more particles. Might go up. Move them up a little bit. Now that we fixed that issue with like the forehead stuff. I think we want them somewhere around the mouth area or nose. Maybe we want them lower. All right, it's pretty cool. I'm gonna try having them smaller. I think we were losing a lot of like the smoke motion because when they expand, they push each other apart. So that is like overriding the, it's gonna override the smoke velocity and just give us like less interesting motion if we do too much expansion of them. I still don't know why this stuff seems to be leading the smoke a little bit too much. Sometimes if you add the pop drag, this kind of helps things match the flow a little bit better. I don't know if we... All right, so now it's just a little bit clearer as to what's going on. I think we just had a lot of issues there with stuff we were not expecting. So now I can go ahead and, man, it still even increased my smoke velocities and it fucked everything up again. I'm gonna try to start moving to like a higher resolution. I'm interested to see some more swirling motion and stuff like that. I might try just manually having it be a bit lower. I think that was a bad idea. Sometimes if you differ too much from the velocity, then it just doesn't match up with the motion as much anymore. It was like getting left behind a little bit too much, I think. Might be the drag stuff I was doing is just too much. I'm gonna add some curl noise to the particles to try to add like some extra motion. I think we were getting too. Sometimes if there's just not enough stuff going on, it will get boring when it rubs up against the collider like that. So I think just a little bit of this swirl scale stuff kind of adds extra detail or extra motion that isn't necessarily in the underlying fluid simulation. So we have the broad motion being created hopefully by the smoke, the pyrosolve, and then little subtle motions hopefully will be created by this pop force. Would changing it from update force to update vel preserve more of that detail? It might. I generally think it's a good idea to just like flick through all those options usually at some point, just to make sure it's doing what you want it to. But yeah, we can do that. We'll just play it once with update force. I did move the direction down a little bit and stuff. I put the noise back in just to have it hitting his mouth more instead of like the upper lip area was a little bit weird. So there's this update velocity method. This can generally like preserve a little bit more of the detail and stuff. This is kind of like how much you want to force the particles. Like this update position is kind of purely overriding stuff. So you lose a little bit of like the other grain interaction and things, but then it will match the best. This update vel seems to be working pretty well. Maybe I'll go a bit higher again with this drag. Starting to miss his nose. I guess when they start expanding or whatever, it will fill in. This is starting to be something. Getting somewhere. So I might just start moving to doing some flip books. This just helps you dial in the motion and stuff a little bit easier, like because I have the caching turned off. Just rewinding and playing back with the viewport mode becomes a little bit more difficult to do that. I think it's starting to like fill in the profile a bit nicely. I think my the pop force I added, like the swirl scale of that is too low. I think that's what's causing these guys to just like shake around like that a little bit. This swirl size here, I'm gonna try going back bigger with that. The pulse length, I'm just gonna make it longer. We want it to update slower. And then with the smoke, I'm gonna start moving to a higher resolution. Once you start doing flipbooks, you can start to it's less about like working in real time, and you're more starting to kind of refine details or whatever. I think we might want to the same thing I was doing to the end of the range of the particle growth. I think I might want to shift the start expansion of some of them randomly as well, so that it looks like it will look like we're just adding more particles over time, basically, if we do that. So right now they're all starting to grow at the same rate, or at different rates, but at the same time. But I think we should offset that to have like, it just will look better, I think, to gradually have more and more. So if I go to this, I can just add the same thing to the start time. I'm going to just make a little bit more particles. Let's see what happens. So this way, just gradually, we'll see more and more start to enlarge over time, instead of last time they just all started to appear at once. I think the pyro might be moving too slow. We might want to make it initial. We might want to make the initial velocity a little bit faster. Let's give it a try. It might be a good time to save. Did a lot of changes. It's starting to be something. Something is starting. So yeah, I think there's a few things I want to do. I think one of them I think I want this starting source area to be even smaller. So it's just more of a defined starting point, instead of already somewhat dispersed. I think we want to visually see them start very centered and spread out over time instead of already being dispersed. It's probably a good time to organize our stuff a little bit. We can do this. On that GitHub link, there's also other scripts, I think. Like I have this one that I wrote. This one is just calling from that same Python stuff. It's calling this Python function that just creates an object merge node that's linked, like a fetch or whatever. Sometimes I like to use that personally just to keep organized. And then if you're ever doing a lot of these fetchings and working like this, like visually I kind of like to have less wires going on. If you want to trace them back to where they're going, if you just go to view dependency links, you can do like show for selected nodes. And then if you highlight them, you can see what stuff they're referencing. If you do show for all nodes, this is nice, especially if you're using the side effects shelf tools. This can help you like trace back any like parameter reference or any place that it's retrieving data from. It will show these links. It's somewhat of a gem. It's kind of should be, I don't know, it should be well known because it's like built in like that, but I don't see people using it too much. And then we just want more initial velocity. So, I don't know, this remap I have been starting to use a little bit. I was using it with that shockwave stuff. It seems to be just a good way to, I don't know, I've just been using it to, it doesn't let me do it? Shouldn't it have velocity? What the hell is going on? I think it's working. I don't know why maybe it doesn't show up because it's a vector data type or something. Oops. I think it's working. I don't know. Maybe I'm not going to use it right now. I don't know. It's a mystery. We'll solve it another day. So let's try this and see what happens. I'm thinking maybe we're just like kind of clamping out at how much. Sometimes with the smoke solver, like it will only be able to figure out what to do with so much velocity. Like the CFL condition and the pressure solver and stuff like that will basically keep you from, it will inhibit you from adding like too much velocity all at once. So maybe instead of cutting this off after the first frame, we'll just wait 7 frames. So instead of when it equals 1. We'll just say when the simulation frame is less than 7 frames. So this will just allow us to preserve more of the initial motion. I might go back down with there. So this should be a little bit less impactful and still help us like build the profile a little bit more gradually or over time or whatever. We go up to 10. Let's do a flip book. Anyone's been able to get a haircut? Ooh, what happened here? I'm still stuck with my starting to get Einstein hair. I have the Beethoven hair myself. Something got messed up here. You cut your own hair? This isn't. You're doing it with scissors or with you just had like a razor, like a number 2 or something? Number 1? VDB smooth on your hair. The buzzer on 3. I was doing that, I think in like high school or stuff, it's just doing the buzzer. So it's a very good YOLO. Is this having trouble getting the velocity or something? I don't know why it was getting stuck at the lip area like that. Let me try going back to closer to what we were doing before. I might, if you're just going to be back in debugging territory, just move to a lower resolution to check results more quickly. So I think we're just pushing stuff too fast at the start. Whoops. So I think we want to go back to starting earlier. And then it looks like my initial trajectory is getting miscalculated. This is just shooting stuff too low, hitting him on the chin. Maybe just 0. So just do flat, horizontal. We're definitely matching the flow a bit better now. I think we're back to getting back to better. Did some unimprovements earlier. So I feel like that's the hardest thing to learn. Like when I was first learning Houdini, I would just make changes and just be like, theoretically, So this is better on paper, but like I wouldn't really visually know how to keep track of it, and then I would make a bunch of changes and the result would just look worse, and I wouldn't really know why necessarily, or like I wouldn't realize it. I would just be like, well, doing things in a more proper method, so it must yield better results. Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes you're like, you have a weird artifact or you're doing something improperly, but it's giving you good results. It can be a bit, it takes you a while to like understand the correlation of the changes, I guess. I don't know. I say that as I continue to just make things look worse. I don't know, I think this spread is starting to be nice. It might be a bit fast. But it's definitely like expanding outwards in his filling in his face in a pretty interesting way right now. Sometimes you can go really low on the grain collision strength, like that. There's that one parameter that I was changing earlier, and that will give you more of a soft kind of collision, less bouncing and like jittering. You'll just get smoother. Things can like overlap for a little bit, but for this kind of effect, I think it should be okay. Getting some nice stuff around his mustache is like, Einstein has that real bushy Brezhnev style mustache. Pretty nice. I think we're going too quick at the start and then slowing down too much at the end. Looking gnarly. Poggers. I think the end of it is too much like a growth, just like a procedural, because it's just relying on the p-scale expansion. I'm gonna just go look at our smoke simulation. This should be a little bit faster. If you're not retrieving the velocity, I'll just go a bit higher with the division size as well. So I think initially our velocity is too strong. We just reduce these radii. That should reduce that initial p-scale. The initial velocity direction overall. I might do a weird... Might do something that shouldn't be done. I don't know about this one. So like with the smoke solver, fluid solvers in general, any grid-based simulation, you tend to get like numerical dissipation at lower resolutions, especially where the velocity will just die out. It's kind of like artificial viscosity. So even though I have viscosity at 0, it's already... If you move some smoke around in real life, like it tends to roll around forever. So sometimes what I do with this velocity is like multiply it by a number a little bit higher than 1. Like it's a weird balance you have to find. If you go too high, your stuff will just get into kind of a race condition. But if you find a nice balance, then you can like keep boosting velocity enough not to completely, like, we'll try it again with this off. So this is kind of like a viscosity effect, is like the smoke, just we're at such a low resolution, every time it's advecting itself or moving itself, it's losing some motion, which is unrealistic kind of. So just with this, all we're doing is taking the velocity, copying it back to itself, but with this coefficient just means multiply by this number. So we're preserving 104% of the velocity speed. So it's a slight boost means you're kind of combating the numerical dissipation. If you do it too much, 1.4 or something, you just get in this race condition. It's like everything blows up. But if you do just a small number, it depends. I'm saying it's kind of bad to do, or not necessarily good, because it's like depends on the voxel size and like your time step or your sub steps. All of that will change this. You'll need to like readjust this setting, but it can be a nice way to preserve the rolling like subtleties and stuff like that of a simulation. So we'll try it. We'll see how it turns out. Let's just leave everything the way it was. So that's what I was trying to do with it, is start out slower and preserve more motion at the end. So our stuff was kind of ending when it hit his hair. We'll see this time. It's definitely happening in the smoke. Might be with our drag we have in our pop network. Try that, and then there was also the thing I was talking about with these pop grains, the collision stiffness. You bring those down, then they can kind of just bounce or like squish off of each other a bit easier. It's just less, probably even with their initial velocity, like it was causing them to all like push each other away or whatever. We might have reducing that drag definitely gave us some more negative space structure and stuff. It could be pretty nice. It's like all going up into his hair. The brain. His brain is forming. This stuff is down here is nice to keep the jawline constructed, kind of. So you can kind of see what I mean at the end. This velocity might be speeding up a little too much. Let's try just going like 102.5%. This confinement, I might go lower with it. That might be making some stuff gnarly. Not the good gnarly. Not the poggers gnarly. This should take 1 or 2 minutes. I'll go get some water. You think all gnarly is good gnarly? This is a gnarly discrimination-free stream. So we're definitely fixing that issue at the end with stuff getting too chaotic or too boosted. I think it was both the boosting of the velocity we were doing, like we were multiplying it too high by itself or whatever, by that coefficient. And then the vortex confinement, those two can kind of like not play too nicely together because they're both trying to boost areas of the velocity. It's still getting a little boosted, seems. gonna go even lower. We go from 1.025 to 1.0125. Now I might feather in that drag a little bit more, just to try to keep stuff a little calm down a little bit more. This could be like a breath freshening commercial or something. the Icebreakers gum. You guys ever had to work on breath effects? I've worked on commercials before where the producers have that scheduled in. They want the CG breath, like a fluid simulation for people if they're outside during a blizzard or something. I think we're getting close. We might be shooting stuff up a little bit too high with our initial velocity. I want to hopefully preserve more of the mouth area. The P scale might be too big. Like if we want to see more of his face, like more features captured by it, we're kind of blurring some of the facial features by making our P scale that big. Try just going down to 0.01 and then that initial velocity, maybe negative 0.5. We'll just try this. So I don't know, it might be better trying to keep a little more of that profile. We're firmly in the tweak zone right now. Right in the middle of the tweak zone. I think it's pretty good. If we just add more particles overall, like start with more particles, then as they grow, it should fill the entire bust. We'll give that a try, see what happens. One thing I was thinking about as well, just is roughly kind of doubling it. One thing I was thinking about as well was modulating the ending radius so they aren't uniform. I don't know how you guys feel about that. We just have some that are like, I don't know, less, maybe some that are half as big and some that are full size or something. Feels a bit too uniform, like too mechanical I don't know if we want it like organic. Could be nice to have some that are slightly smaller. Variation. Every parameter gets multiplied by a random that's fit between 0.5 and 1.5. This is feeling pretty good now. The beard area, the eyes filling in. Some nice. It's like a meteorologist report. And if you notice, we have a nice low pressure front moving into the brain air territory later this afternoon. It's gonna reduce the temperatures down to 22 degrees. Yeah, I think we're getting there. I think maybe we still want more overall. So I want to fill stuff out even more, and then if I'm going to make some smaller, we want it to have more particles overall. So we'll multiply that final. I'm going to do this on another line. It's going to be the same idea, but just a little bit cleaner code. Because either way, we're kind of multiplying the final value, whether we do it on another line or just it gets a bit too much when you just cram everything onto one line of code. So we'll do p-scale times equals random, but instead of going, this will just make things randomly between 0 and 1. Maybe we'll just do a ramp. The ramp is nice. Sometimes I do like exponents and things, but the ramps are always the most like artist friendly. Do you not change your seeds with random offset? With the time offset, I wanted them synced up because I wanted like them to be shifted around and always the same length kind of growing, if that makes sense. So ones weren't speeding up. With this one, it might make more sense to update the seed. But yeah, basically, like I didn't. If these seeds were offset, I might have gotten an outcome where like these were spaced out too far. Essentially, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to visualize. And then this ramp will just be like scale distribution. Should be good. You click that button, it makes this ramp. I think instead of having a smooth thing like that, I'm gonna do like a stair step situation. So we'll basically have some that are a third or something. Maybe we'll stick with thirds. So the majority of them will be full size maybe, and then a few of them tiny and a few of them 2/3. So let's just see where we are now. So I added another, I forget what it was, 100,000, or I added another 1,000. So I think it was 10,000, maybe just 1,000. I increased the overall amount of particles and then did that modification. So some will now appear smaller than others. So this kind of, I think, just helps you imagine there's like more detail in the face. I feel like when there's everything's like the uniform size like it was previously, it just makes you. I mean, they aren't visually like all the same size because they're growing at different speeds, but just having some small ones in there just makes you perceive that there's a bit more detail than there actually is, maybe. There's like little bits of shading and shadowed areas or whatever that catch your eye. This is quite nice. Getting from two different directions like at the top like that. Got a widow's peak situation or something. We might need even more particles overall if we really want to fill his form out. Einstein genie from a lamp. His balls. Yeah, this is quite a magical fantasy. We've summoned Einstein's spirit back to the Earth realm today. I think it's nice to leave it unfinished. Like I think we're gonna run into a lot of problems if we really try to completely fill it, because like stuff starts to explode and jitter around and stuff like that. And I think this, like, it's kind of nice to see this silhouette clearly defined and then have the other area kind of broken up or whatever. So I'll leave it like that. We're already a few hours in, so I'm just gonna keep moving. Probably just make a cache for these particles. Might go to a lower division size. So I saved the file right before I made that change. This might visually change the results quite a bit, but we'll take a chance and see if it does like really differ too much from that flipbook. We can go back to that save file. This will be particle advection sim. Sometimes when I name this version here, I'll start with like what the file is. If you keep them always in sync, it's less like cache management or less stuff you have to worry about. I'm just doing this because in the expression it's based off of the operator string, the node name of this cache node. Then usually just a good idea to strip out attributes. There's like just way too much stuff that the grain keeps track of, like an array of all the neighbors. All this stuff is just extra junk. Previous, we don't need it. The only things we really need is ID. I guess the particles aren't even changing. We don't even need that. I'll just keep it, just in case. Do ID, scale, we definitely want to keep that. I think that's all we need. The age isn't really going to change per particle because they're all getting created on the first frame. Yeah, and all this other stuff I don't think is really going to be that helpful. You guys think I've missed something? We're good. We might do some extra frames at the end. This simulation is going to keep going, so we might want some extra frames just to retime it or do something like that. The velocity stuff, like I'm planning to just calculate that with a time blend or whatever. So we have a fixed particle counter. I also have their IDs, so I should be able to use a time blend. And then I think with Redshift doing either the deformation motion blur, like just doing the transform steps, or I can just add it back with a trail stop. So this might have been a blunder. I should have tried at least to do the save in background. But it's a pretty quick... It's a pretty quick cook. Should just be a couple minutes. Go back to some of the references and stuff. So I think lighting it kind of like this, like I don't know if we're even going to want to see the collider, the collision object, but I kind of think doing it like a plastic or something where you just see a few speck highlights and you don't really notice the rest of it should be pretty cool. Look at that. This is magnificent. I'm kind of thinking just very monochromatic. The particles I'm going to probably add some colors to, but for this thing I think it's going to be too distracting having big color. Nice frosted glass. You imagine going into someone's house and seeing this on their table? It's kind of strange, right? It's like, is this like the spirit of someone you're remembering? And you, I feel like you want. Oh my god! Oh no! Get out of here! Yeah, I don't know. It's like too many dolls. If you don't have kids that are like actively playing with the dolls, is a bit weird. What's going on here? This is like an eyes wide shut situation. This is another red flag. You pour this statue a glass of whiskey every night. I feel like the putting it inside of the glass, putting it inside of the glass, at least with the refraction, like getting some distortion as things move around, is going to be cool. So I'm probably going to have to build like a little bit of a shell or like a thickness, and then that will control how much distortion or refraction we see. This is like someone made this. Someone made it by mistake. Is like you go into their house and you're like, is this a true follower of Christ, or this is someone who just really enjoys marijuana? It's like a lot of this. These Christmas leaves look like weed leaves sometimes. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like the frosted glass is a little too much. I think keeping it like nice and sharp with the frosted glass is going to obscure our motion of the particles and stuff too much. So I think doing a nice glossy smooth surface should be pretty cool. People love the horse statue so much. I think it's like an American thing or something, right? Is it the Rivington? Is like the sculptor? Might be a Remington. Rid of the supplies. Forget the name of the guy, but whoever made this, Frederick Remington. He just has an entire array of these horse statues that he's made. They're quite flimsy too, like they aren't made that well, I feel like. Like all the little stuff just gets bent. looks a bit weird. I feel like the polo players is a bit better. Is this? This is like they're playing polo, but they also they're hunting, or the other player fell over. The hell is going on here? Enough. This one is on 3D scans, I believe, but they have a horse statue similar to that. They also have this or something like this as well. You were dialing the glass differences in like roughness pretty well, Jabram. The that like handprint you had on the glass. We're getting close. What the hell is going on? Stuff. It's just drinking out of someone's head. It's perfectly normal. They just pour you a glass of punch. You just serve someone a glass of red wine, but it's in someone's like a cut off head or something like that. Imagine just flipping this over and serving it and be like, here's your maybe a bong. Just getting blasted off Winston Churchill. This is like what's that guy's name that does the murals? I know the Coit Tower here, he did a mural. What was the name of him? What is this guy's name? We don't have any art history people in the chat. It's a very specific period of history or something. I don't know. Our cache is done. Yeah, so I'll just do lead from disk and turn off the other visualizations. So we'll just make sure we haven't differed too much from the results. Looks like we did miss a little bit of that duality, the direction or whatever. All right. So I'm gonna go back in here, go closer to the resolution we had before. Just save this again. It worked this time. We were able to save in background. No more interruptions. So this should, how did this thing get stuck? In the viewport. I think it's gone now. I guess it was the first frame of the particle simulation. So let's maybe do some colors. Do another channel ramp and we'll do it as a vector so that it makes the this will give you like a color slider instead of the scalar. And then we'll do this just based off of a random number based off of the ID. We'll just do another variation of the seeds. We'll give it a try. Let's see where our cache is at frame 100. This looks like we're getting back closer to our settings we liked. I'm gonna do another constant situation. Just, I don't know. I feel like it's a bit better to just do a few different colors instead of like interpolating between the stuff. This is kind of like your science class. Some atoms or something. Some Dippin' Dots. This is like too much of an ice cream, maybe. I don't know. I feel like this motion is starting to be pretty good. Maybe you just want to stay something close to white. Some black. This is like one of the graphs you have to look at when you're getting your eyes tested, like the vision stuff or whatever. It's a real retro kind of color vibes. This feels somewhat scientific. I don't know. The other option we would have is like just gonna do this in another node so we can switch between them. So maybe this pink is like something, I don't know. I'm thinking if you just keep it two colors. This is a bit like one of the inside the body structures or whatever, like red and blue, the dioramas of the humans. I don't think that's working too well though. think this stuff we did earlier is a little bit I don't know, a little bit more interesting. So with Redshift, the first thing we want is this time blend. So we saved it to disk. If we want subframe motion, we just have to recreate it with the time blend. So what this will do is do subframe kind of interpolation of the particles. If we do time shift, you do remap. Oh my, I haven't seen this node before. Have to try that later. Set that aside. So if you do a time shift, you can just make sure this is working if you just do like FF divided by 8. So without it, you'd see we're getting the popping. This node gives you the subframe interpolation. I don't know if we want like doing some bullet time stuff or something. I was just trying like an animation curve. Might be a little too chaotic. I feel like if you did do this, you want to lock in your flat area, or your slow area to like right when it's revealing the profile, kind of. You want to probably find that a bit sooner. Could be just a bit too. Maybe we'll just try a subtle ramp. We have some extra time at the end. What did we go up to? 320? Lost it. All right. What's going on here? I think this. Somehow this end value got set too high. So something like this is pretty nice. I think you could even do this with a couple different shots. Cut to different areas. Show them coming together. It will just work kind of the wide angle or something like that for right now. We'll just do control, click on the camera to make a camera. And give the chin stuff a little bit more room to breathe. I usually go 36 with this aperture. We might want to do like 85mm. So something like a portrait lens, or a little bit tighter. I think we want some more negative space. It's kind of hard to know right now without lighting. This stuff here looks quite bad. So with this light, I'm just gonna get rid of it. We're just doing that to set stuff up. But we'll do a redshift light now. So under redshift, if I just do RS light, control click, I can place one from the viewport. And then with this guy, Einstein, we don't want to render with these sphere primitives. We can visualize that node with, you do the, fuck. So let's get this, it doesn't like to update them. All right, so you hold down the R button and the T button to move the render and visualize flags to different nodes. So this way, we're visualizing the thickness or the p-scale with spheres, but with redshift under particles, we can render them. The points as particles. Redshift doesn't like the sphere primitive that Houdini makes. It doesn't really know about that type of geometry necessarily. And then under settings, it looks like we're pretty much set up to do deformation with particles. So instead of the point attribute, this was just going to compare the positions between the two frames, the shutter open and shutter close times. I think that's good. You're going to need a shader. You might try it. Start without a shader and just see how it looks, the lighting before we add colors and stuff. And we'll just start with some of the bounce lighting. See what we get. Pogar. Look at that. Very mysterious. Very elusive. Might. There he is. Look, really nice. Look at that. We keep boosting. Keep finding better high points. So I might make a bounce card and just see what happens with it. I usually like to do this to add a little bit of fill light. Kind of was nice though going to black. You can totally see it's Einstein. Yeah, you can start to make it out. Could be really nice, like I was kind of talking about earlier, like doing some cuts, like you're revealing. You do some macro shots of areas evolving, and then the final resolve shot is like a wide shot, more straight on or generally clearly telling that it's him. If we add in the glass shader, it's going to change stuff a little bit too, so we might want to see what happens. We might not even want to do that. It's already looking pretty good. So with this grid I added, just turn it off with primary rays. I think, does this work? Might be my OBS. Sometimes you can look through the grid or like drag it around to position it. I'm just gonna move it around manually. So just do that to get some extra light kicking in. I just want a little hint of it. Basically, instead of going to black before, just want some lighting information. So I use the size of it to control the intensity as well as the distance, like how far it is from stuff. I want to try to kind of wrap it around. so that this area here is like light to dark. If it's too close over there, then it's like your eye isn't, we want to keep people's eyes looking in this area. So this might not look like too much, but if we go all the way down to 0, you can see there we're fully shrouded in darkness. You go back to where we were, we have a little bit of information. So like with this photographic exposure stuff, if we wanted to, we could set the black crush and get rid of it. But it's nice to have that lighting information in the scene. It just looks a little more realistic. Let's see what happens with adding some colors. We'll do basic shader, point attribute. I don't know why it defaults to tangents, UV tangents. It's like nobody ever uses those, right? Any of you use it? Maybe once you've used them, but I feel like the typical usage of this is to get the color. We might want to start with some blurriness. And then of course we just need to add it. I think sometimes you just need to refresh your scene. Let's try getting a glass, the shape or the shell of the bust. I think we can. Trying to find which area of our scene or our nodes we want to reference. This just has to recook the polyreduce and stuff like that. I think this one should be good. Just say this is like out model. If I can reference this, we still render from here, but with another object. This will just be like glass gel. We'll retrieve it. The hell happened? This is like the particles sticking through it or something. So because we did our VDB stuff, it's not going to line up perfectly. Might be okay. Let's just see what happens. We can always do VDB stuff in here to adjust it. I might just start by doing that. So to make this have thickness, I'm just going to do the VDB scatter trick or whatever. So I'm going to blanket him with these particles. It'll take a little bit longer to lay them out. And then you can do VDB from particles. So this is just going to kind of do like a fluid surface. But it will give us a shell, like the surfaced particles will have some thickness to them. I don't know what a good starting value is, but we'll try this. I think my settings were too high of a resolution just to start out with. I'm gonna stop it. I messed something up. So I might just do less relax, and I'm gonna start with less particles. I think these are just way too thick overall. Forgot a 0. That will get you. So we can go even lower. Something like that should be okay. Gamma Bassoon, you're back. First one here, and first one back to see the end. So we got him filling up with particles. This is our flipbook of roughly where we ended up. So I just did the velocity from the smoke simulation, and then using particles, I ended up adding the grain solver in as well to have them colliding with each other. We ended up there. I'm just making like a shell of his form now. I think we want to subdivide stuff just to have it smoothed. Sometimes I switch to the loop subdivision. If you're working with like triangular topology, the loop stuff is just like upresing. With this, Catmull-Clark gives you some weird. It can give you some weird artifacts sometimes with a loop. I don't know. It's a OCD thing of me. What are we at? 1 million. 1 million should be okay. So now when we have the particles converted to VDB spheres, or it should be pretty smooth. You can do another smooth SDF just to get rid of some of those imperfections. I think with this glass, we want it to be pretty smooth, so it's not like getting a lot of little speck hits. And then we can just go back to polygons. Polygon soup usually is better for render geometry, like it's just takes less memory. This might even be too much. Like with Redshift, it just slows everything down. Kind of looks like skin pores, yeah. I might start with a pretty low resolution kind of representation of him, just to keep the scene going pretty quickly. And then if you use the clip node, I think we have to convert to polygons before we do it. You can do this to visualize like the shell thickness. So rendering glass, the renderer just needs to enter and exit. Like the ray needs to go through some thickness to figure out how much distortion is happening. If you don't do it, then it would be like these particles are moving around a solid glass. Like you would get a lot of distortion because it would think this entire base is made out of glass. So that's why I was talking about the thickness, stuff like that. Then we just need another shader. This is going to be our particles, and this is going to be glass. We don't need that. And, we can just start with glass. Let's see what happens. Yeah, thickness is really important. So light, we're gonna have to maybe like relight it or something for the glass. We really want to get like a nice speck riding along. But I think this might need to change the distance it is. That's what I was saying, like it might be expanded too much. But I think it's going to be really nice in these areas with this distortion stuff happening. We might want some roughness. This is kind of like a depth of field, like blurriness. Render smoke with this. I wasn't planning to for right now. I didn't cache it out, and we're already pretty deep in the stream. It might be interesting to try it, but for right now, I'm not gonna mess with the smoke. It's just gonna be too, I don't know. It's definitely something to try to see how it looks, but for right now, it's just gonna be too time consuming, I'm afraid. Yeah, the roughness is a pretty nice one. This is kind of giving you like the closeness to surface or whatever. So I think with this, we just want to fix these penetration artifacts. If I just go to the where we're building the shell, you could just use the peak node to expand or inflate his face. So I don't know how much we need. Maybe something like that. Sometimes when you do this, you get like some intersections. The VDB will iron that out because it's gonna like reseal everything. But sometimes if you want to fix it, like doing a blur can help sometimes. This will just do like a relaxation, so it can help you kind of recover some of the sharp edges, that the creases or whatever that penetrate themselves. Let's just see what happens with that. Is it fixed? I think it is. Oof, something happened there. Sometimes that stuff, maybe with this edge adaptivity, this can kind of mess up your stuff sometimes. That's cool. Wonder what it actually means to blur the position attribute. Do the point just get an average of the distance between nearby points and kind of move closer to that average? It depends what method you have this set. So influence type is based off of connectivity, so it's doing it based off of edges. You play around with some of these other modes and stuff with it. Proximity is more, I think, what you were thinking, where it's just spatially like separating that way. And then pin edges is important as well, with like the seams or borders of polygons will not get smoothed if you have that on. This is a really good node to play around with, and it runs with OpenCL or whatever on your graphics card as well. So it's really fast to calculate all that stuff. Before, people were just using the smooth node. These give you pretty much similar results, but this I think is just CPU based, so it would be slower with a lot of like iterations and stuff. Yeah, you could get really cool things with this blur. You could get really interesting effects and results. Like you can even kind of use it to simulate like tearing, like flesh kind of stretching as it if you like start to poke holes in it, you can get really cool things. But I think I just turned off all the adaptivity of the edges. I'm gonna see if that fixes that artifact. You can see why I was doing it, because basically to transfer this mesh to the GPU without edge adaptivity is pretty slow. It looks like that was the issue though, with that black line. I think one thing you can do instead of edge adaptivity is maybe VDB resample, and this works kind of the opposite as you would think. Like going to 2 is half resolution because this is based off of the voxel size. So we're saying the voxels will be twice as big, or basically we should have like 50% of the resolution. It's pretty slow. I don't know what happened. Did I do something wrong? Oh, I did do something wrong. So instead of voxel size, voxel scale. He's like, voxel size, I was trying to explicitly set them to be 2 units. It might have just been wigging out because it was like too big or something. What the hell is going on? It's just a slow algorithm to cook. Let's try doing it again. Just keep daisy chaining these together. Sometimes I do that so I don't have to like update the results. Like if you do that with the remesh or stuff, it's a little bit. I think the resample node can be really slow sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It's like not. It's not changing my. Oh. So when I switch this to fine, it set the thing back to 1. But yeah, I think it's with really high resolution VDBs, it's a trickier algorithm than you think because it's running over the SDF, so it's trying to preserve like the distance values inside of the volume to be precise. So it's not as straightforward as so I think I can just bypass that. So this, what I did with this, it's hard to tell, but this is making the end result a lower resolution. We were at like 6 million points constructing the mesh before, and now we're just at like 600,000, not 6 million. So I'm building the SDF for specific reasons to get like the shell. I'm kind of stuck with it as part of my process. Like otherwise I would have to do you could maybe do an extrusion of the mesh with let me go up here. You might be able to do it with like the poly extrude. Sometimes that gives you other artifacts or stuff like that. I'm doing it this way because I wanted like some of the smoothing controls of the VDB stuff. You could do it maybe with just like a smaller voxel size, and then that might speed up everything quite a bit. Yeah, I feel like you just have a little bit more control over VDBs, like because it's re-topologizing the end result. You fix any artifacts that might have existed in the, because this model is based off of a scan, so sometimes that gives you weird little things that like catch the light. I think this is okay for now. I might go into my lights and play around with it. So because we're doing a glass object now, we kind of have to be like really careful about this specular highlight and where it lands. Could go just gonna turn on this IPR live SOP update. You could just go to one of the early frames where he's more emptied out to get a better definition of like the lighting stuff. And sometimes I'm gonna normalize the intensity. Yeah, it's gonna be hard to light it. I think going to a bigger size just is a little bit more forgiving. But getting it to still be like somewhat readable, it might still be difficult. This is already starting to be a little bit better. Might do could do something kind of cool if you like did an attribute transfer to go from an IOR of 1 to revealing it this way. This IOR at 1 is just going to be like a pass-through surface. Like it won't bend light at all. It won't change the refraction. So maybe based off of the smoke or the particle radius, like you could do some reveal that way. I'm not gonna do it right now. I don't have enough time in the stream, unfortunately, but it's something to think about. So this roughness is pretty important as well for changing the lighting and the way that it reacts to things. I don't know if this... The roughness can be expensive, but with the redshift, like the GPU render, it's not as big of an issue. Definitely with Mantra and stuff, it was an instant, just like add 10 minutes to like even see what you were rendering. But for redshift, it's not as bad. I'm gonna try doing some other stuff with this light. This is pretty cool. The redshift is kind of subscription based. It's not you can't go on and off month to month, but like that basically they have the maintenance license, so every year it switches to a it becomes slightly cheaper than purchasing it every year, but it's definitely not as flexible as it could be. You might be able to use it with like the watermark, and then if you, I don't know, this probably isn't a great idea. Like you could submit it to a render farm that supports Redshift and render it without a watermark when you need to that way. But yeah, it just isn't super. This is kind of a trick, but I mean, once you render one or two things on the render farm, it's going to outweigh the price of just buying it yourself. Like the render farm stuff gets pretty expensive pretty quickly, and it's just a pain to like transfer all the data and stuff. I think this, I might just start with something like this. I don't know. Could go lower with the IOR, like if we're saying it's more of a plastic or not as depending on glass or whatever, it has the different IOR stuff. So I'm just playing around with some different sizes of the light. Maybe this way you could get a little bit different definition, and then as well, like the shape of the light will affect your reflections and just end result quite a bit. A backlight that only hits the edges. Like a pretty fierce rim kind of situation. I think that's working pretty well. Got a lighting champ in the in the chat today. Your primary role is lighting? Yeah, I'm still kind of picking it up, so I'm not super. I still need to learn more about it. I just want to maybe see if I can get rid of this. I don't know if this is the bounce card that there you go, I got rid of it. We might just keep going with this and see where we end up. We might need more brightness, maybe more bounce. Whoops. It's getting saucy now. Somehow we got stuck in another tweak zone. We're making some improvements and stuff though. It's pretty cool. Another thing that could be nice is like in the shader, do different materials. Like if you have some strips of plastic in the glass shader, so you're transitioning between two in like a stripe fashion or something. I think that might define like the silhouette a little bit better. At least just make things a little bit more organized. I don't know. What do you think? Do this Maxon noise. Just like squish the range. Might look cool. I want something pretty simple. I don't know these names enough to really dial them in quickly. Yeah, they're really nice. I wish other programs had them, like just more presets kind of. The one thing I do wish is that they supported these in SOPs in Houdini. So if you made like a displacement using them, you could match it perfectly in SOPs. Sometimes you need to do that, and it's like you're just completely unable to recreate like the noise if you're trying to do something with like moving particles to sit on the top of a displaced surface or something. You just kind of get stuck. I think just this typical noise. Yeah, because in Cinema 4D, because that's Maxon, you can use these same noises as like modifiers or whatever they call their stuff in that. But it's just unfortunate that you can't. I don't know if like we did an email or something to Redshift or Maxon, they might be able to compile a SOP that does the noises. My 3ds Max is showing. So maybe do we have a sine? So maybe instead of this, we just do a really low frequency, and then the sine with a where's the ending? Can't even do it. There's no amplitude. So with the sine, just multiply the noise value to get more structured kind of stripes. Ooh, a little bit of a gem. Snuck that one in. This is like the same stuff I was kind of doing with the last week's CoolZone to get the repetitive, like somewhat structured stripes. All right, so let's just try this and see what happens. Do the material blender. We have our glass base. And we'll just do a plastic starting point. For the layer, and then the blend will just be this noise. The sine wave can make anything psychedelic. Yeah, I mean, it can kind of. I'm trying to get it. Like the noise is already pretty psychedelic always to start with. So I'm trying to get it here where it's basically making it a bit more like synthetic, like just structured or repetitive. So maybe even doing like a lower frequency. Ooh, this is kind of nice. Like the noise, I want to basically not distort stuff very much. And then I want a lot more sine to have like a repetitive shape that isn't just like isn't too busy, I guess. But I don't know what happens, like somehow it's doesn't feel too much like Einstein now. What do you guys think? I might try, yeah. I might try let me just see what happens here. I guess it still does if we go front on. I guess I don't know, the rim light stuff is always going to be hard to make it look like Einstein. Zebrastein. I mean, it does like fill in some of the negative space a little bit. See what happens with more. I guess you kind of need like the profile if you're gonna make sure people know it's Einstein from this view, at least. Sometimes with these grids, the bounce lights, just do like the ends node to wireframe it. I feel like it won't, you just have to do it like this. So in the viewport, it's just somewhat see-through. So I don't know, with these, that gray color is a little bit messy. I guess we want the roughness even in this plastic. We don't get any weird sharp highlights. I don't know, maybe just like a pure white. It looks like this. I think in Sinnohs you insert a coin to... Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my idea, like going with Einstein and then with this color scheme is it's kind of like molecules or something like scientific based. Yeah, I don't know, maybe this grid is like the gravity, like E equals mc squared, weird like visualization you see everywhere. It's kind of falling nicely on his face now, the way that it's going. Maybe just more repetition. The distortion of it is working nicely with the lighting and stuff. Might do more the bending of space-time. Yeah, it's like the his theory of relativity, like the where you just see the planet and it makes like a, I don't know what you call it, like a black hole or whatever that thing is. Suction, a funnel. A funnel, to use scientific terminology. I'm just going to make these particles or the glass a little bit blurry, more blurry. Yeah, I don't know, maybe with them black is just less. Oof. This is a bit of an issue on the first frame. Yeah, is the kind of thing I was thinking of. There he is. Young boy. Looking pretty nice with it. This is like we Jokerfied him. We gave him the Joker makeup. Everything becomes Jokerfied. This is pretty interesting here. But every generation gets its own Joker. Like right now we have the, I don't know, the Zoomified Joker. The, what was that one? Jared Leto, his Joker is the, that's like the early 2000s, like I guess like late 2000s Joker. It's like the App Store, the iPhone app Joker or something. The Heath Ledger is the early 2000s Joker. I think this is a good starting point. Just move to a new version of the scene. Try out some other frames. Jack Nicholson Joker. That series just entirely was pretty I mean, it was interesting. There's really interesting characters in it, but just overall, like, I don't know what you would call it, stylistically or whatever, like the Danny DeVito penguin, like wearing pajamas with the. Doesn't it have the butt flap on his pajamas with the little hatch? When you grow up on it, it's awesome. No, I mean, that's like, I really like the Catwoman scenes in that. Just like her character and how they treat her more as like just like a mentally unfit kind of person. I don't know, it's that Catwoman character in that version of the Batman is, I think, the most interesting like interpretation of the Catwoman. You bet I do. All right. I think this stuff is working pretty well. You might want to play around with some of this exposure stuff. Sometimes you really have to slam on the bounce to get like some bleeding and stuff. I don't know if we need more more depth to our stuff with all the shell of the glass. Special relatively. That's like the classic example of you like driving a car and throwing a baseball up in the air or whatever, right? So this stuff is pretty nice. Let's try to get our motion blur going. So we need this, and that might be it. Let's see if it goes. It's gonna be really subtle. I might turn that one on just in case. I kind of figure it can't hurt. I don't know if we can jack that frame duration and just do this as like a debug. Yeah, so it looks like we're getting some blurring. Getting some really abstract art type of stuff. Go back to the default. Whoa. I don't know if we want depth of field. We already have a lot of blurring happening with the glass. I think we're good how it is right now. Might just blast off a quick test here and see what happens. So I might do like a quarter res. And I might just leave everything pretty default, just to try to get the quickest flipbook imaginable. The swirls, you're talking about just the general distortion, or when I boosted, or you're talking about these lines? The pattern? Yeah, I think it's, I don't know, like I'm interested to try out the stuff I was talking about earlier. I don't know if everyone was here, but like doing a proximity-based transfer to modulate the IOR of the glass so that it's a pass-through, basically invisible surface until the stuff like kind of reveals it or something. But that's for a bigger scope of a project than we're pushing far today. So I'm just gonna do a render to mplay and see. Tried to just do this. Oh no. What happened? Where did that sizzling come from? You think we need more samples? I don't think we need to go that low for that. Let's see if the samples, yeah, I think we were just hitting the sample limit. So that should be good enough for a test. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a bit messy here at the start, but I guess it's like seeing the light through the refraction or whatever. So that was the reason I was thinking of doing the proximity-based reveal of the IOR or whatever, so that it's just not as busy at the start frame. Maybe we just do a still or something to end the stream. I don't know if we still aren't there yet. We need Redshift RT or something to tackle, to finish an animation and do a full build from scratch in one session. I'll just let this go a few minutes. We'll see what it turns out like, and we might blast out a the RT needs to be a checkbox. I think they are implementing it, kind of. I haven't examined the actual implementation, but I do remember in their presentation they said they're trying to make it match the results you get in the offline render as much as possible. It's just a drop down, yeah. Yeah, so it's a different engine, so you probably get it would be like if you ever use Blender, like switching between cycles and Eevee, like this stuff I'm doing with the roughness of the glass probably would be one thing that would really throw it and give you some different results, but just for working more interactively, it would be. Generally, even if something gives you slightly worse results, if you can work with it in real time, it's usually just better to use it, because you're trying to just produce stuff as quickly as possible. Like this kind of circumstance, it's a good approach. You just, as long as you know the results you're getting in a quick amount of time, you can hack or do whatever you want and bash stuff together to get good results. Viewport materials too, using OpenGL. Hopefully with Redshift RT, the Hydra viewport stuff, like you kind of just use Redshift RT instead of OpenGL. That would be ideal. They already have Redshift with Hydra, so you switch to LOPS and stuff, you can visualize it that way, but I think it's still a little bit beta area right now. Like you have to change some environment variables and do some low-level modifications and stuff to get it working. Yeah, I think the first initial shot, you might want it to be more profile or something like that. I don't know too much about having it start off. I don't know. It's just a little bit. It doesn't feel as much like this is hitting the surfaces as I would like. I might have done too much. Yeah, that should be cool to try. I might have done too much with the peak sop to inflate him, so that he's too far from the particles at this point. I'll let this go a couple more minutes. I'm gonna get some water. Be right back. No beers. It's still too early here for me, I think. Perhaps tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm planning to do a somewhat more official wrap of the Hulai stuff. Spend some time going through like maybe the calendar or some of the forum entries, or at least like the top votes and stuff. So this segment here is starting to feel nice. But yeah, I don't know, the opening part of it isn't too connected. It doesn't feel too connected from this angle. So I might halt the render. I'm just gonna move. Looks like he's coughing. Yeah, it just doesn't. We either need to do the IOR stuff or maybe just disabling the glass for right now. Doing, if you were to render it with without the glass for an animation, I think that would be more successful for right now, but it's definitely something I want to keep playing around with. So I might just go, I'm just gonna move this around and try to get a more compelling still, to try to just have something nice for today. This is pretty nice. This is definitely like the expansion of gravity or space. Yeah, this is, we found something pretty quickly. Maybe oof, that silver fox just can't help it. Getting reflective. I might try some tire smoke coming out of his ears. Some guy did Einstein getting his head exploded on Instagram like a year ago or something. It turned out pretty cool. It was like a stop motion. It was like a very stylized like smoke puff coming out of his head or something. It definitely looked nice. We'll try the depth of field stuff. See what happens. This quick to focus is a pretty nice feature. I feel like you really want to slam it if you're gonna do it. Otherwise it feels a little bit too much, just gets too confusing with the other stuff. Like the blurriness of the glass. Yeah, I feel like you'd want to be able to tell which is which if we're gonna add both. I think this is pretty interesting. Might just play around with my bounce card and just see if I can change the shape a little bit. Space G? Oh, you're answering him? You switch to a camera that have a roll to it. Going back to perspective, I can kind of get rid of the roll. But yeah, I think Space G is the best just to get back to like somewhat reasonable orientation or whatever. I think some of the settings in the preferences as well, like depending on the decade of Euler rotations you're, I don't know why they named them like that. But yeah, they have like the 90s Euler style, 80s classic, like depending on the tumbling settings, sometimes you can get into a more of a wonky everywhere. So I think this mount sliding the new position is a little bit better. I don't know if we're, I feel like it's still, this is almost working more like a shadow. The 80s style. I think I don't know, I did some weird stuff with it, but it was definitely because of just being used to the older settings that I did it. Like, I didn't like how they updated it so that the centroid or the pivot location of the view would always change. I think I just grew accustomed to Houdini leaving it like at the middle of the screen and just got too addicted to it. So I might make another light and see what we can do with it. It'd be nice just to have a hint of something there. I don't know. I think this, I need to change my main light if I want to get rid of that overly aggressive kind of area that's wrapping around. The near looks kind of funky. Yeah, I don't know what's... I guess this kind of feels a bit more Einstein. Yeah, the ear. Something happened to it. It has to be this light, right? Yeah. It's just like a bit, I don't know if it's the light is just a bit too big. This glass lighting a reflective surface is, oof, could be nice. That's what you were thinking earlier when you were like, is this madman really going to attempt to light this glass bust? I think this is starting to feel more it's starting to feel more like Einstein. No, yeah, I mean, it's even this isn't still, I don't know, like that, like an hour or 2 hours ago, just that first frame was pretty interesting. Looks kind of like Beetlejuice. That seersucker suit, the zoot suit. But yeah, at the start we had a frame that was like punched in a little bit more. And then it was, the lighting had like a lot more shadow and stuff to it. I feel like that might just be too much, this kind of fill light stuff. I don't know how that backside is getting brighter. Definitely doesn't feel too physically accurate. Yeah, I don't know, it's like Chris Arn, how's it going? It's just weird how bright it's getting. It's like definitely not the bounce card or other lights too. This is kind of a little bit better. Stuck in the tweak zone. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm getting close to just leaving it somewhere around here. Cross the event horizon. It's like I'm stuck in these lines. I'm just getting warped. I'm just in this circle. Like the orbital velocity, and you're not getting closer or further to your target. You're just making changes that are arbitrary. Just gonna try to get his eyes a little bit more readable, and then it's probably gonna be it for today. I don't know if a different frame, I think I'm gonna get particles. This too early is just weird, kinda. Like, this could be nice. All right, this might be where we end up for today. Let's move up to full res. I don't know, somewhere, something happening. Yeah, it's definitely more difficult to do the glass. Picked all the hardest things today. Animation, fluid simulation, particle infection, glass surfaces. Well, it definitely looks more like Einstein. Einstein with a nose ring. The septum piercing. Yeah, I mean, this certain areas of this pattern might just maybe like offsetting the sine wave, like just adding a value to it to alleviate that issue, but the overall flow of this pattern is pretty cool. How it landed on the forehead and everything. There he is. The benevolent genius. Yeah, so probably ended here. The marathon stream. Is it supposed to be glass? Maybe add a bit of teal greenish tint. Yeah, I was thinking about maybe some dispersion or something like. I was kind of thinking more like a plastic with the roughness and stuff to it. like, I don't know, that's kind of where I ended up, but whatever whatever is gonna make it look better, I'm up for now. Yeah, that was my thought process. Like I did reduce the IOR, so it's more of like a synthetic thing. Maybe adding like a seam, like from the mold or something, could make it just more realistic, or even add some nice like structure to it. But yeah, so I think that's gonna be it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. If anyone wants to see the stuff, let me pull it up. My directories are a mess. Yeah, so we'll be back tomorrow. This simulation part is most exciting. The Simulation Nation will be back tomorrow, not simulating, but lighting this simulation, pushing the CoolZone to 4 hours. We got stuck in a few tweak zones. Gotta watch out for those. But yeah, we'll be back tomorrow, 1 p.m. doing some lighting and stuff like that for this. That smoke. Yeah, I don't know. The one thing I was thinking about was like maybe my collision volume is the collision velocity is a little too strong. I feel like some of those large, like, because the shape is so big, it creates just pretty big gusts of wind that kind of break like the scale. Like I don't know, I might dampen that down. But I'm looking to start tomorrow with a cache. Yeah, it's closer to like a helicopter almost. But yeah, I'm looking to start tomorrow with like a cache, so we don't have to waste time for the stuff to simulate, because that's a big, just greasy hand on the lever of turn the stream into 12 hours or something with doing too many of those steps. Yeah, thanks everyone for helping me out. Got some nice ideas and progress and stuff with this dreamy Einstein mental man. All right, see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out.